Glory America, bonjour, hi Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt, live from the West Coast today. Greetings to all of you along the Midwest and the East who are getting battered by a snowstorm. The mothership of Warren, Ohio took in 18 inches. Ashtabula, as we called it growing up, Ashtabula, had 27 inches. Now, my beloved late grandfather, A.T. Roll, fire chief of Ashtabula, didn't consider that a heavy snow unless it was 3 feet. That's when the firemen had trouble in Ashtabula, when it was 3 feet or more. Snow effect, you know. So how many times have I heard the term snow effect? Everybody in northeastern Ohio and parts of Pennsylvania and upstate New York knows what lake effect is. And so we'd hear lake effect growing up. Well, they got the lake effect all right in Ashtabula yesterday. So I'm thank goodness it didn't hit in Georgia or North Carolina or Virginia, where they never seem to be prepared. Although Glenn Youngkin did a good job on his first snowstorm. The U.S. is warning airlines of chaos as telecoms roll out 5G. I do not pretend to understand this story. I do believe, however, and there's a second story from Reuters, that the FAA has cleared 45% of the commercial plane fleet after 5G deployed. Well, that would mean 55% were in some sort of danger or risk. I just don't believe that. I don't believe it's a real risk. If it was a real risk, I think you would find far more shouting than there is. But we'll follow that story. In Israel, a study of a fourth dose of vaccine finds it will stop Omicron from having more than mild symptoms, but it will not halt the disease. So your next booster, and I will get one as soon as it's available, very pro-booster here, will not stop you from being a victim of Omicron. You just won't feel anything. So that's pretty effective to me. In fact, the Wall Street Journal reports this morning, Omicron variant has emerged as so mild that many are dropping COVID-19 precautions across the United States. The CDC director, however, went on a little media campaign yesterday. Rochelle Walensky saying she could have made clearer the agency's guidance is always changing. Do you think? I've issued another invitation to Dr. Walensky to appear on the show, as Dr. Fauci used to and Dr. Collins did until he retired. But Dr. Walensky appears to believe you can communicate with the country by appearing on the Sunday shows, which are watched by a grand total of 4 million people. Seriously, I'll be on special report tonight, and that'll be 2.5 million people, combined with my radio show this morning. That's more people than Dr. Walensky will talk to if she does the full Ginsburg, all 5 Sunday shows. And that will change as Fox News Sunday skyrockets, but hope you tune in tonight to special report. The CDC's new challenge, writes the New York Times, grappling with imperfect science. So now we're going to blame the science because they're completely incoherent at the CDC. All they have to say is they don't know when they don't know. And all they have to say is get vaccinated and get the booster and you're not going to die of the disease. Highly unlikely you'll even be hospitalized. That's the only message. The most disturbing story of the morning comes from Education Week. No going back from remote and hybrid learning, according to some districts, including San Antonio. If you're listening on K-Loop, you ought to fire everyone on the school board. Remote and hybrid learning is not school. That's not what taxpayers pay for. Taxpayers pay for public schools to be open and for kids to be taught in an organized, disciplined setting. There are very rare cases where children cannot go to school. This is an attempt by unions to create working conditions which aren't really work. Teaching is hard. It's not magic. They get paid well in almost every district in the United States. They need to go to work. And if you have a place like San Antonio that says, we're just going to keep this remote learning, shut it down. By the way, and just fire everyone. Fire everyone. Glenn Youngkin, the new Virginia governor, gave a speech to his legislature yesterday, key cut number 10.
My message to parents is this. You have a fundamental right enshrined in law by this General Assembly to make decisions with regard to your child's upbringing, education, and care. And we will protect and reassert that right.
Democrats would not applaud for this. Only Republicans applauded. I think Democrats have irrevocably put themselves on the side of closed schools. Democrats are for hybrid learning. Democrats are owned by the teachers' unions. Don't vote for any Democrat until after this red wave teaches them that schools are for education. Children are the priority. Parents are the input people, and teachers' unions should be outlawed. Senate Democrats today are going to press ahead with their debate on the voting rights bill. Now, I'm really praying that they vote on this. I want to see where Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire, Mark Kelly of Arizona, and Senator Bennett of Colorado, where they all vote. They want to destroy the institution. I really want a record vote on destroying the filibuster. First, they'll have to vote to bring it up. Actually, because of some maneuver, they get to debate the bill. Then they get to try and close debate on the bill by cloture. And that is when I suspect Chuck is going to blink, because you're going to lose. I'm going to come back to Chamath later. Chamath Palihapitiya is the 10% owner. Oh, I should say there are different reports. Some people say he only owns 2% of the Golden State Warriors. Other people say he owns 10%. Either way, he's a moron. He's a culturally significant, intellectually deficient billionaire who yesterday dismissed the Uyghurs. Who cares about them? I'll play you the tape later. Activision Blizzard has cleaned out their harassers. The 36 employees are fired, 40 others disciplined, as Activision Blizzard takes seriously a gamer culture of indifference to women and all sorts of harassment claims. And good for Bobby Kotick, who is the CEO there. He said he would do it. He did it. Good for him. Dominic Cummings, the feisty aide who oversaw the Brexit campaign, Boris Johnson unwisely took him into number 10. Turns out he's the guy who's feeding all the stories on Partygate, on Boris, as Boris continues to sink on the polls in Great Britain. The dictator Xi defends crackdowns in the Common Prosperity Drive, according to the Financial Times. He says it's a pursuit not driven by egalitarianism, but to grow the pie. He's growing the pie for the princelings. China seeks to cushion blow of economic pain as the momentum slows, according to the Wall Street Journal. That place is going to fall apart, I'm telling you. China canceled Winter Olympic ticket sales. Going to be empty venues because Omicron or some variant, we don't know what's there. They don't tell us the truth there. And Xi, as I said, is defending. Financial Times went deep into his defense as well. Benjamin Netanyahu has thanked fundraiser donors, skipped a Knesset session, and is believed about ready to sign a plea deal that will exile him from politics for 7 years, which means the Knesset governing coalition may reshuffle very quickly. Russia is pulling everyone out of its embassy in Ukraine, making it very possible that Putin's invasion is coming soon. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Mark Milley, tested positive for coronavirus. He's fine. And I want to play for you the Chamath Palihapitiya short version. All right? Cut number one.
Nobody cares about. Let's be honest. Nobody cares about what's happening to the Uyghurs. Okay, you bring it up because you really care, and I think that's nice that you care. The rest of us don't care. I'm just telling you a very hard.
Wait, you're saying you personally don't care?
I'm telling you a very hard, ugly truth. Okay, of all the things that I care about, yes, it is below my line. Okay, of all the things that I care about,
of Sri Lankan origin. He's an owner of an NBA basketball team. There are words I could use to describe him, but mostly he should be exiled from the NBA under the Donald Sterling rule. If you say a racist thing in the NBA, you're supposed to be out. The NBA should force him out. What's good for Donald Sterling is good for Chamath Palihapitiya. I'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Nobody cares about. Nobody cares about what's happening to the Uyghurs. Okay, you bring it up because you really care, and I think that's nice that you care. The rest of us don't care. I'm just telling you a very hard.
Wait, you're saying you personally don't care?
I'm telling you a very hard, ugly truth. Okay, of all the things that I care about, yes, it is below my line. Okay, of all the things that I care about, it is below my line.
Disappointing.
Billionaire idiocy on display yesterday. Chamath Palihapitiya talking on a podcast. I'm joined by David Drucker of the Washington Examiner. David, have you heard of this controversy yet?
I have heard of the controversy.
Do you know this man?
I do not.
Have you ever heard of him before?
I mean, excuse me, probably you. I'm an NBA fan, and I root for the Lakers. They play in the same division, so I imagine I've heard of him. I've never given him a second thought, and now he's going to become a household name.
Well, he is, and I just was, because I'm beating the living daylights out of him for being indifferent to a genocide, which is about the lowest you can go on in the moral world. What should he do? He ought to get educated, apologize, support Uyghur Education, Amnesty International, and sell his stake of the team because the stench is on them. The NBA forced out Donald Sterling. Do you remember that in 2014 because he got caught on tape saying racist things about African Americans?
Oh, yeah, of course.
What would that standard applied to Mr. Palihapitiya require?
Well, I mean, if you use the same standard, then he's going to sell.
Yeah.
And the league doesn't want to be associated with him. I don't know that the league is going to use that standard for a comment like this.
I don't think they will, and do you know why? Why do you think they won't make him do it? Because if there was one rule, indifference to minority rights and general moral obtuseness, he would qualify. Why won't they do it here?
Well, let me just say at the outset, with things like this, it is difficult to speculate, and I cannot get inside the head of anybody. What this gentleman said was insanely insensitive and stupid and, morally obtuse. And I think that's why he backtracked, even though, and this is what I found interesting in terms of what I found interesting, he backtracked toward criticizing China rather than backtracking away from criticizing China, which has been the league's larger problem, especially as China as an adversary to the United States and their crackdown on their own citizens, let alone the genocide of the Uyghurs, has increased and taken center stage around the world.
I'm glad you brought that up.
No, but to your point, I don't know that the NBA wants to get into the business of policing everything everybody says, because they will end up having to push out half the people associated with the league by the time they're done. And usually corporations that are making money shy away from this sort of internal HR work.
I don't know if you can avoid. Enos Cantor Freedom went on Tucker last night. No, I didn't see it. I was asleep, but Dwayne got the clip. Here's part of what he said, cut number 3.
I remember we had a game today at 12:30, and my manager texted me this video right before the game. And first of all, I couldn't believe it. I was very angry, very disgusted, and very disappointed. And, his comments were so... I was like, I couldn't focus on the game because of his comments. I mean, you look at the Uyghur people, what's happened to the Uyghurs is one of the worst human rights abuses in the world today, and there is a genocide happening while we're talking right now. And him going out there and saying, I could care less, is a shame, and it is disgusting.
No, he's wearing a Free the Uyghurs t-shirt, by the way. Chamath Palihapitiya then posted, after withering criticism, important issues deserve nuanced discussion, some clarifying comments. And this is his clarifying comment. In re-listening to this week's podcast, I recognize that I came across as lacking empathy. I acknowledge that entirely. As a refugee, play for sympathy there, my family fled a country with its own set of human rights issues, so this is something that is very much a part of my lived experience. To be clear, my belief is that all human rights matter, whether in China, the United States, or elsewhere, full stop. That is not an apology. That is not an indictment of China. That's nothing, David, other than a Silicon Valley attempt to say, screw you, I'm not retreating.
Well, maybe so. it's not the sort of apology that he's going to end up having to give. But it was a step in the right direction. And I just, again, from an NBA standpoint, a geopolitical standpoint, I found it interesting that it's the first time I've seen somebody rephrase their comments toward criticism of China. And given how invested the league is in China and how China uses that to punish the league when people like Enes Kanter and others speak out, it was interesting. I think what we have to watch for next is to see what the NBA front office does. Do they pressure him? Do they sanction him? And look, do fans in the Bay Area punish the Warriors for his remarks and for his lack of saying anything further if he doesn't say anything further, or does he?
I don't think the NBA will, because they don't want to upset China. They're under the thumb of China, and they're not going to punish him, because to do so would be to give credence to the idea that there is a genocide, even though the world knows there is a genocide. And so Chamath is going to be allowed to escape. I don't really care about Chamath. I care about the genocide. I care about the NBA's hypocrisy. David M. Drucker of the Washington Examiner, thank you, my friend. Coming right back with Byron York. We continue to focus on Chamath and the NBA's hypocrisy and the Democrats' hypocrisy on this. Alleged human rights champions, quiet, ignorant of the world's greatest genocide. Stay tuned. Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. I'll be seeing you on Special Report tonight. I do not know if Byron York will be with me. Sometimes he pops up on Special Report. Good morning, Byron. Will I see you tonight?
Good morning, Hugh. It's going to be just you tonight.
Oh, it's too bad. All right, I'm talking about Chamath Palihapitiya, and I hope I'm saying it right. Palihapitiya, it might be. The 10% or 2% owner, depending on what you read, of the Golden State Warriors, who said yesterday, and I want to play it for context for people who are just tuning into the program, on a podcast yesterday, cut number 2.
I think I'm spending a lot of time and money actually trying to fortify America's supply chain. You guys know about some of the things that I'm doing. I'm not doing that from a moral perspective. I'm doing that from a practical capitalist perspective. I think the jobs are better served for Americans. And I think that we should have the ability to build our own businesses, just like China has the right to do for themselves, without the risk of these things being undercut by policies that we don't understand, which is effectively what you do when you outsource your supply chain to countries where you're not 100% aligned with them.
Yeah, and they're dictatorships.
So I'm not even sure that China is a dictatorship the way that you want to.
Stop right there. Cut number 1 then.
Nobody cares about. Nobody cares about what's happening to the Uyghurs. Okay, you bring it up because you really care, and I think that's nice that you care. The rest of us don't care. I'm just telling you a very hard.
Wait, you're saying you personally don't care?
I'm telling you a very hard, ugly truth. Okay, of all the things that I care about, yes, it is below my line. Okay, of all the things that I care about, it is below my line.
Disappointing.
So, Byron York, first of all, does that fall into the category of Holocaust denial?
I'm hesitant to use Holocaust comparisons because they're always wrong, they're always bad, it's a bad idea. So, I just put that on the side. Now, as far as the genocide of the Uyghurs is concerned, it's appalling to say something like that. But I have to say, I'm a little bit ambivalent here because I'm going to tell you a very hard truth. Of all the things that I care about, the NBA is below my line. I have to say, I heard you talking with David Drucker earlier, and David said he thought he was an NBA fan, and he thought he had heard of Palihapitiya. I will tell you, I've never heard of Palihapitiya before. I listened to the last half hour of your program. So, look, this is bad. This is a stupid thing to say. It's a bad thing to say, and it should be condemned. But of all the things that I'm going to be worried about today, that's probably not going to be one of them.
Because I worry about China, which is a dictatorship.
Because you're doing it for me. I do feel that. I think, I just don't need to worry about this today because Hugh is doing it for me.
I want people to... I'm going to ask Senator Cotton about it next hour, too, because I think China is a threat to the world, and it's part of the threat to the world because they are involved in a genocide, and a genocide is a category of Holocaust, and so to deny the genocide is to be a Holocaust denier, and the NBA drove out Donald Sterling rightly over his racist comments on tape in 2014. And I think what we are dealing with in this part of the country, in the Silicon Valley Accidental Billionaires Club, and this guy is in the Accidental Billionaires Club because he went to work for Facebook in 2004 and got options. We are dealing with political ignorance on a scale that threatens the country. He's also a big backer of BLM and of liberal causes. He's just a moron. And I think we actually have to worry about morons, Byron, when they go on in their little universe and talk with amazing indifference to 1 million people in concentration camps and 12 million people about whom there has been an official declaration by the previous administration confirmed by this of genocide. I think we've got to get upset about that.
All right, on the moron part, perhaps I'm surprised you haven't mentioned another angle to this. Obviously, in the Donald Sterling part, clearly a large number of players for the NBA are black. A large amount of the NBA audience significant amount is African American. It's an American league. I mean, that's all serious. What you haven't mentioned here is that the NBA does have significant business dealings with China.
Yep.
It's been valued at about $5 billion, which is not nothing. And they have all sorts of deals with China's tech and media organizations. So this has come up before. They have an incentive to overlook China's bad behavior, in some cases atrocities. So that's another part of this, and just calling Palihapitiya a moron doesn't really get to that, does it?
Well, the first quote I played for you where he says, well, China's not really a dictatorship. That does get to it. Because what we've really got going here was an attempt by an NBA owner who's clearly been read in to the NBA approach to say nothing about China. He chose to say nothing about the Uyghurs in a stupid, ham-handed, and ignorant way, thereby drawing attention to him. Enes Kanter Freedom was on with Tucker last night and said this, cut number 3. Cut number 3. Not playing?
I remember we had a game today at 12:30, and my manager texted me this video right before the game. And first of all, I couldn't believe it. I was very angry, very disgusted, and very disappointed. And, his comments were so... I was like, I couldn't focus on the game because of his comments. I mean, you look at the Uyghur people, what's happened to the Uyghurs is one of the worst human rights abuses in the world today, and there is a genocide happening while we're talking right now. And him going out there and saying, I could care less, is a shame, and it is disgusting.
Okay, so that is Enes Kanter Freedom. I think you put your finger on it, Byron. The geopolitical consequence, the news hook there, is not that a billionaire is a moron and ignorant. That actually is not even news. It's that he's part of the NBA club that is doing the best it can to do business with the dictatorship and not have anybody notice. And we've noticed. We've noticed.
We have. And actually, he's helping everybody to notice by saying such provocative things, which, again, I don't think... it was stupid in the sense that you sort of say the quiet part out loud, but it wasn't stupid in the sense that it was a misrepresentation or a misspeaking of what he actually believes. I think he said pretty clearly that he just doesn't care.
Now, China is punishing Lithuania. That was a big story I covered yesterday, and Taiwan is attempting to help Lithuania, as we should be doing, because they established relations with Taiwan. So China has cut off all exports to Lithuania. They're trying, and they did the same with Australia. China is trying to bully everyone into silence about their country. And so this fellow is an accomplice to that. That's the bigger issue, I think. And what's its implication for American politics, if anything?
Well, first of all, when any business person like Palihapitiya says something like this, you immediately look for business connections, financial interests in China to see if they're saying it for that reason. And if it's a politician, you look for supporters, financial supporters and otherwise, boosters, who are invested monetarily, financially invested in China. So I think that what you have to do is you have to look for the interests of each person who's doing this. I mean, are they disinterested, and have they just made an actual intellectual analysis of the situation and come to this position, or do they have some actual financial interest in saying it?
And he has a financial interest. Now, it just crossed the wires that Palihapitiya's SPAC is going to merge with Pro-Kidney in a $2.6 billion deal. So he's buying, he's a serial deal maker. That's what he's known for. And one wonders whether or not his investors are very pleased with this. They can't be, that they are being acquired by a guy who's suddenly radioactive. And if we want to make China the center of the geopolitical struggle that it is, I'll be interested in what Senator Cotton says next hour about this. We can't let this pass, Byron. I guess that's my point, is that legacy media doesn't want to deal with this either, because legacy media is in many ways compromised. I mean, NBC is in bed with China right now for the Olympics. They're not going to cover this, are they?
No, I don't think so. As we speak, they're talking about, amazingly enough, you're going to be shocked. They're talking about Donald Trump and the Republican Party right now. So no, a lot of cable news, other than Fox News, is not going to be that interested in this.
I really think there's an echo of the 30s here. It just is amazing to me what appeasers will do vis-a-vis Russia in Ukraine and China in the South China Sea and with their genocide. I am never not amazed by appeasement. Byron, last word to you.
Well, there have always been appeasers, and it's not always the 1930s. I mean, there have been apologists. There were apologists for Soviet atrocities, communist atrocities all around, apologists for Cuba. There have been apologists all over the time. It doesn't mean it's the 1930s, but it's a pretty ugly affair.
It does mean the 1930s is when the group for whom there are apologists is on the march, and that appears to be Putin's Russia and Xi's China. Byron York, follow him on Twitter at The Washington Examiner. See him on Fox News Channel. I'll be right back. America on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Of all the Senate contests in the 2022 cycle, the Pennsylvania contest is probably the one in which Republicans are most vulnerable. Pat Toomey retiring after 2 terms. A number of Republicans have stepped forward. Ambassador Carlos Sands was on the show yesterday. Dr. Oz is running. I gather a lot of you know who that is. I don't. And also David McCormick. I'm joined by Jeff Bartos now, early into the race, formerly a candidate for lieutenant governor in the Keystone State from Berks County. Good morning, Jeff. Welcome to the program.
Hugh, thank you so much for having me on, and good morning to you and your listeners. And I hope this is the first of many conversations we're going to have together over the next 6 years.
Well, I hope that if you win, you are always going to be invited here. I'm going to invite each of the I think there are 4 major candidates in the Pennsylvania race. You're one of the 4 GOPers. And I'll have you on each the same number of times. Would you introduce yourself to the audience, Jeff?
Sure. My name is Jeff Bartos. As you mentioned, born and raised in beautiful Berks County in the central part of the state. Went to college down in Atlanta and law school in Charlottesville. Hugh, I think we could argue about which college town is prettier, Ann Arbor or Charlottesville.
Oh, no, Charlottesville wins. Ann Arbor's a dump.
Good man.
Yeah.
Met the love of my life, my wife of 25 years this year, Cheryl. Had to go all the way to Charlottesville to meet a Jewish girl, nice Jewish girl from Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Oh.
We got married in '97, moved back to Pennsylvania, and have raised our 2 girls who are both in college, as you know, as a professor as well. Not so easy to be a conservative on college campuses these days,
but
not. Our girls are great. And I'm a small business owner. We've raised our girls in the southeastern part of the state.
And so when did you get interested in politics? I know you ran for lieutenant governor, but throwing your hat into the ring for Senate is a big leap, and you're up against some very well-funded opponents.
Well, for 2 decades, I've been a committeeman at the local level, helping, the not sexy part of politics, right? Standing outside on election day. You know this growing up in Warren, Ohio. Like, local committees make things happen.
Yep.
And working at the local level, raising money where I could for good candidates at the local, state, and federal level. In 2015, when Bob Casey supported the Iran nuclear deal, I decided to move from being an activist at the grassroots level to running. And so that's how I ended up in that 2017-2018 race. I started running for the Senate then. Cheryl and I are very active with the U.S.-Israel relationship, charitably as well as strategically supporting great think tanks like FDD and other folks. So got into that race in 17, moved over to the lieutenant governor's race, won a 4-way primary, a contested primary in 2018, and then we came up short against the lockdown governor Tom Wolf, who I think today we'd win by about 20 points, but 2018 was a rough year.
You also were up against Fetterman, who I think is going to be the nominee for the Democrats for this seat. The giant socialist is what I call him. He's what, like 6'7" or something like that, and he's to the left of Bernie Sanders. He's running for this seat too, isn't he?
He is. We had a debate in 2018, and I'm 6'1". I'm not a small guy, but yeah, John's pretty tall. You know, the way I look at this, Hugh, I mean, I'm a small business owner, a lifelong Pennsylvanian, and every Democrat running, John and every other Democrat running for every office in Pennsylvania this year is going to have to answer for oppressive lockdowns, shut schools, communities ripped apart, churches and synagogues closed. And so I spent the pandemic, right, you know, as a contrast to that, I spent the pandemic calling on all those statewide relationships I've built over the last 20 years. I co-founded a nonprofit inspired by my friend Pete Snyder in Virginia. I co-founded a nonprofit that we called the Pennsylvania 30-Day Fund. And through the work, I led the effort, but it wouldn't have happened without 100 volunteers and over 1,000 donors. We raised $3.5 million and helped over 1,000 small businesses across all 67 counties keep the lights on, keep the dream of owning their own business alive, saving thousands of jobs for working families. And so that contrast, that narrative, the Democrats locked down, destroyed communities, Bartos fighting for Main Street, Pennsylvania, that had been crushed by a government that didn't care. We win this general election. I think in Pennsylvania, 4 points is a landslide, and I'll bet you a nice dinner anywhere in Orange County that I beat Fetterman or any other Democrat by 4 or more points.
Now, Jeff, to get the opportunity to do that, you've got to win a primary, and I want to know you're up against 2 self-funders, and one of them has got more money than God. How do you do that?
Well, this past weekend is a validation of the strategy we've been running for over a year. When we launched this campaign, we talked about all 67 counties, grassroots, saving Main Street. This past weekend, our Central Caucus, which represents over 1.5 million Republican primary voters, the largest caucus in our Republican GOP, we've been working at the grassroots level really for 5 years. We won a resounding victory in the straw poll that happened this past weekend. That's a testament to the grassroots infrastructure that my team and I have been building for 5 years, and really have Pennsylvanians know that I'm a lifelong Pennsylvanian. I'm sure you probably know already that's going to be an issue in this race, because most of the other candidates have parachuted in here, some in the last couple of weeks, some in the last year, because they see a huge opportunity for themselves. I'm running to continue to serve the Commonwealth, and the great grassroots activists in the Central Caucus saw that this past weekend. And the folks you just mentioned barely registered, and I won almost 50% of the vote in an 8-way ballot this past weekend. And we're going to continue that momentum through the next 4 weeks of all the straw polls.
So I like to be blunt with people. Ambassador Sands was on yesterday. She grew up in Pennsylvania, but she moved to marry her husband, Fred Sands, in L.A. She's come back. Mr. McCormick is an investment banker. I believe he's from Pennsylvania. He's come back. It doesn't seem to me that voters generally care about that, provided you've got a good paper trail of some Pennsylvania ties. But you're going to make that the central piece, staying in Pennsylvania?
I think it is a core part of how Pennsylvanians are going to look at this. You know this growing up in the great state of Ohio. Pennsylvanians want to know that you're there fighting for them and that you have a track record of getting things done for them, right? It's one thing to come in here and say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. You know, for me, this campaign has all been about when the chips were down, when Governor Wolf had us shut down and we did not know which end was up and Main Streets were getting crushed, I rolled up my sleeves, I rallied a group, and we got together and we helped a lot of people. And now, again, I led that effort, but it didn't happen without dozens of volunteers and over 1,000 donors. But what that showed was the best of Pennsylvania. I led that effort, and Pennsylvanians know, as a lifelong resident of this Commonwealth, I will always show up for Main Street. We did a bus tour over the summer. We visited all 67 counties in 2 weeks, never been done before in Pennsylvania. Again, a testament to the grassroots infrastructure that we've built over 5 years. That's how you win these elections. It's who shows up to vote on primary day.
When is primary day in Pennsylvania, by the way?
Well, we hope it's May 17th. There's going to be some litigation over the maps. As you pointed out, I think, on your show recently, our Supreme Court is quite partisan, and they have a tendency to do their own thing. So there's definitely going to be litigation. We're hoping it's mid-May.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about. I went to Ohio and moderated a debate among the 6 Republicans running, and people like Matt Dolan are running in the Rob Portman lane. He's the only one in the Rob Portman lane. In fact, Josh Mandel, who's been on the show a lot, he's running to be the Trumpiest of the pro-Trump candidates or Trumpist candidates. Who is Jeff Bartos politically? Give us some GPS. Who would you be working with most closely in the Senate, do you think, Jeff Bartos?
Well, I have to harken back to your Reagan days for a second and say that my favorite modern politician that I read a lot about would be Jack Kemp, and so there's a lot of Jack Kemp in how I see the world and how I've read and been schooled, and so there's a Kempian philosophy that carries all the way through to someone I've supported since he was in Congress, which is Tim Scott, and someone I admire greatly. There's a lot of great senators. Senator Toomey's done a great job on economic issues at the national level. But the way I see it, we launched this campaign a year ago on a pretty simple message of saving Main Street, Pennsylvania. And we talked about education, we talked about economic opportunity, and we talked about safety and security. Now, at the time I started that, Hugh, I got a lot, politics, right? Everyone has an opinion. And I got a lot of opinions on I should be saying this, I should be saying that. I focused in on those 3 issues. And then when Glenn Youngkin won the governor's race in November, all of a sudden we saw our donations go up. I got a lot of people calling me, telling me how smart the campaign is because we've been focused on these issues. I think what Governor Youngkin did in his campaign is what we've been doing for a year, which is focusing on the kitchen table issues that matter most to Pennsylvanians across all 67 counties. And that's how we win.
Now, the Twitter account, Jeff_Bartos is easy enough. What is the campaign site?
JeffBartos.com.
That's easy, too.
Yeah, JeffBartos.com.
So how much money do you have to raise? I'm very practical about this, and I know Dave McCormick is going to throw, I don't know how much he's going to put into this. Ambassador Sands could put a lot. How much money does Jeff Bartos raise?
Well, we raised, again, I call it Team Bartos, right? So there's a super PAC out there doing great work. There's a C4 out there doing great work, and then we have our campaign account. I think the numbers that'll show up on those various entities at the end of January are going to show over $6 million, perhaps even $7 million raised in 2021 amongst the various entities. We've always budgeted $10 million for this campaign. It didn't matter who was getting in or who got in or who didn't get in. We've said a combination of we have all the resources already, Hugh. We have all the resources we need to get our message out. We have a winning message. We've got the grassroots infrastructure. And so I hear you. It's fun to look at who's coming in and how much money they have. But at the end of the day, focus on grassroots, focus on all 67 counties, Main Street showing up, being there, fighting for every Pennsylvanian across all 67 counties with the resources to get the message out. Saving Main Street is how we're going to win not only the campaign, but it's how we're going to govern.
Now, let me talk to you about Chamath Palihapitiya, and I do this only because it's the theme of the morning. He is the...
Yes.
What did you make of his indifference to the genocide ongoing in China?
Well, so as I mentioned earlier, we're Jewish, and we're Hungarian on my side of the family. Cheryl's family's Russian. We lost, my grandfather's uncles, 4 of his uncles were murdered and their families were murdered in the Holocaust in Hungary. I was lucky, right? I was the one brother who stayed in America, and it's just dumb luck, divine providence, however you want to look at it. So indifference to genocide anywhere. I suspect you've been to Yad Vashem in Jerusalem. If you go through Yad Vashem, if you go through the Holocaust Memorial in Washington, D.C., if you have any sensitivity to the depravity and indifference and cruelty that these regimes inflict on helpless minorities, then how could you say what that owner of the Warriors said?
I don't know. It's astonishing. I have not been to Yad Vashem. I've been to the Holocaust Museum in D.C. and to synagogues in Italy and Petersburg and to the Holocaust Memorial in Berlin because I think it's important, but I haven't been to Yad Vashem. I've only been to Israel once. And I'm just curious, though.
We should go together.
I would enjoy that. I would enjoy that. So, Jeff, last important question. Steelers, Eagles.
Well, I know you're a Browns fan.
Yeah.
I'm a lifelong Eagles fan.
Okay, good. You're safe. Okay, thank God.
I get some crap for this around the state because I am unapologetically Eagles and Sheep.
Okay.
That is an ongoing debate. Eagles, Steelers, Sheets, Wawa. So
I'm very glad to hear it's Eagles. You'll be allowed back, and I look forward to meeting you in person, Jeff, and to a debate I hope we host up there. Thank you. Jeff Bartos on Twitter, candidate for the Pennsylvania Senate.
Nobody cares about. Nobody cares about what's happening to the Uyghurs. Okay, you bring it up because you really care, and I think that's nice that you care. The rest of us don't care. I'm just telling you a very hard.
Wait, you're saying you personally don't care?
I'm telling you a very hard, ugly truth. Okay, of all the things that I care about, yes, it is below my line. Okay, of all the things that I care about, it is below my line.
Disappointing.
Welcome back, America. That is Chamath Palihapitiya, a billionaire tech investor in Silicon Valley, is minority owner of the Golden State Warriors. I'm joined by United States Senator Tom Cotton, who serves on the Intelligence Committee, the Armed Services Committee, and the Judiciary Committee, all of which would be interested in the genocide underway in China. Good morning, Senator Cotton. Good to have you.
Good morning, Hugh. It's good to be on with you.
What do you make of Mr. Palihapitiya, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, comments?
Well, they show a shocking indifference, Hugh, to the depravity of the Chinese communist regime and the plight of the religious and ethnic minorities known as the Uyghur people in northwestern China, who the entire civilized world, to include the Biden administration, has acknowledged are suffering at the hands of an atrocious genocide where women are being forcibly sterilized. And if they're not being forcibly sterilized, they're being viciously raped by Chinese Han soldiers in a kind of intergenerational ethnic cleansing. It's not surprising, though, coming from one of these typical liberal tech billionaires who saddle up their high horse and ride it so hard when it comes to things like climate change and green energy and equity and the Black Lives Matter riots, when at the bottom line, all that matters to them is the bottom line. And they think they can get rich off of those things. And they can with these Democrats in charge and all the tax breaks and subsidies being handed out. But they know that if they cross the Chinese Communist Party, it may threaten their access to the Chinese market or to cheap Chinese inputs. So I have to say, what this guy spoke over the weekend is a classic Washington gaffe. He didn't say something that was not what was in his heart. He said exactly what was in his heart and what's in the heart of so many of these liberal tech billionaires and their courtiers in Washington.
Now, Senator, I want to play for you two longer clips because it's not just that line, below my line. Here is the longer clip of his conversation with Jason Calacanis, cut number 13.
No, it was very strong. You know, it's one of the stronger things he did, but it's not coming up in the polls. And I think the whole Republicans interested in getting Hillary to run again is
nobody cares about what's happening to the Uyghurs, okay? You bring it up because you really care, and I think that's nice that you care. The rest of us don't care. I'm just telling you a very hard.
Wait, you're saying you personally don't care?
I'm telling you a very hard, ugly truth, okay? Of all the things that I care about, yes, it is below my line. Okay? Of all the things that I care about, it is below my line.
Disappointing.
Well, I think people, if you explain to them what's happening to the Uyghurs in China, they care, but it's not top of mind for them.
That's not
what's
caring.
Top of mind right now is they go to their grocery store and the shelves are empty.
Sure, that I care about. Yeah. I care about the fact that our economy could turn on a dime if China invades Taiwan. I care about that. I care about climate change. You know, I care about I care about America's crippling and, decrepit healthcare infrastructure. But if you're asking me, do I care about a segment of a class of people in another country? Not until we can take care of ourselves will I prioritize them over us. And I think a lot of people believe that. And I'm sorry if that's a hard truth to hear. But every time I say that I care about the Uyghurs, I'm really just lying if I don't really care. And so I'd rather not lie to you and tell you the truth. It's not a priority for me.
And my response to that is I think it's a sad state of affairs when human rights as a concept globally, falls beneath, tactical and strategic issues that we have to have. We need to have another luxury
belief. That's another luxury belief.
I don't believing in the human declaration of human rights that Eleanor Roosevelt created with the United Nations. I don't think it's a luxury belief to believe that all humans should have a basic set of human rights.
I think it's a luxury belief.
Right.
And the reason I think it's a luxury belief is we don't do enough domestically to actually express that view. in real tangible ways. So until we actually clean up our own house, the idea that we step outside of our borders with, with us sort of like morally virtue signaling about somebody else's human rights track record.
So, Senator Cotton, it's worse than it sounded, isn't it?
Yeah, Hugh, I think it's important for people to hear the extended cuts because it's clear that he believes strongly, that it shouldn't matter to us that China is committing genocide against its own people. And that's just one of the crimes that China commits against its own people. Think what it's done to Hong Kong. Think what it does to suppress Christian belief throughout China. Or
Tibet.
Harvest organs, what it's done in Tibet. What he cares about is making a buck in China. That's what he cares about. That's why we've had so many of these globalist CEOs, many of them from tech companies, smothering Capitol Hill for the last year, lobbying against the slave labor bill that passed with overwhelming majorities late last year after the Democrats finally relented, because they want to get cheap products and inputs for their companies from Northwest China, even if it's being produced by Chinese slaves. In those clips, he reveals their liberal mindset. Again, he got up on his high horse about climate change because he can make a buck about climate change, but he's willing to be totally silent about genocide in China because he wants to make a buck in China as well. Just like you, the Golden State Warriors' pathetic response to his statements. They issued a statement yesterday saying that they disagree with his opinion without even saying what the opinion is. Who knows what opinion they're talking about? Maybe this guy likes chocolate instead of vanilla, and the Golden State Warriors want to disagree with that opinion. The Golden State Warriors, like the rest of the NBA, tremble in front of the Chinese Communist Party. Even when they're expressing disagreement and trying to get distance from one of their owners, they won't even express the opinion they're trying to get distance from because they're so greedy about access to the Chinese market.
Let me add,
Silver and the NBA should stand up today and denounce the Chinese Communist regime for its crimes against the civilized world. But don't hold your breath, Hugh.
I hope you bring him in to talk to him about this, because this is obviously a deep NBA problem. Chamath Palihapitiya issued a tweet 13 hours ago. Important issues deserve balanced discussion, some clarifying comments. His clarifying comments include, in re-listening to this week's podcast, I recognize that I came across as lacking empathy. I acknowledge that entirely. As a refugee, my family fled a country with its own set of human rights issues, so this is something that is very much a part of my lived experience. To be clear, my belief is that human rights matter, whether in China, the United States, or elsewhere, full stop. I have to play for you one more clip, Senator, because I don't think any people have heard it. This is cut number 2.
I think I'm spending a lot of time and money actually trying to fortify America's supply chain. You guys know about some of the things that I'm doing. I'm not doing that from a moral perspective. I'm doing that from a practical capitalist perspective. I think the jobs are better served for Americans. And I think that we should have the ability to build our own businesses, just like China has the right to do for themselves, without the risk of these things being undercut by policies that we don't understand, which is effectively what you do when you outsource your supply chain to countries where you're not 100% aligned with them.
Yeah, and they're dictatorships.
So I'm not even sure that China is a dictatorship the way that you want to call it that. Again, I think
communist country that's in the name.
Look, you have to understand, Jason, there are a set of checks and balances here on China that, at the end of the day, I don't think that I have the moral absolutism to judge China. And I would say that when NATO is silent, the United Nations is silent, all of Western Europe is silent, and America is effectively silent, that this issue may be small data points being extrapolated in a way to create a narrative that maybe not be true. And if it is true, Jason, there is a responsibility for those body politics to do something, because that is the early warning signal that the rest of the world uses to say, okay, hold on, let me reprioritize my list of things. So I guess what I'm saying is I am not going to be an armchair journalist on this topic, nor am I going to be the armchair human rights advocate for the world, because I just don't know. I can focus on the things that I know about, build the things that I know about, and if something really does get red light status, then other parties will do something. And again, I just want to be clear. NATO is silent. United Nations is silent. America is silent. A press release doesn't change the actual technical posture on these topics.
Okay.
Senator, that is not only craven, it's ignorant. Your response?
Deeply craven and deeply ignorant. And again, the extent of the remarks belies his weak effort to clean it up. It's not just a one-off line in a broader interview on a topic about which he's not informed. He's clearly very informed about the topic and has very well-defined views. He is a communist toady who will do anything to make a buck. There were people like this guy in the Cold War when it came to Soviet communism. The difference was our economy was not entangled with Russia during the Cold War the way it is today. So now you combine the worst aspects of fellow traveling with communists and capitalist greed, and you get what you have with this guy. I mean, I think the NBA has to come out today and explain whether they're going to take any action. Hugh, remember a few years back, they forced Donald Sterling to sell the Clippers.
Yes.
And he was the majority owner because of his racially prejudiced remarks. Is the NBA going to let this guy continue to be a minority owner of the Golden State Warriors? I mean, this is clearly a well-developed viewpoint. He does not care about a communist regime committing a heinous genocide against its own people. And again, we're just talking about one specific aspect of their crimes against the civilized world. Add to that Tibet and Taiwan and Hong Kong and oppression of Christians and organ harvesting. The NBA has been tanking for the last few years, in part because they've let their politics overtake their basketball games. This is not the NBA at its peak of the Jordan, Magic, Bird years. The NBA, the ratings for the finals last year, for example, were awful. And it's in part because they probably turned off viewers with their craven sucking up to the Chinese Communist Party.
And I think this fellow got to listen in on the big boys, the majority owners, and he heard them say, we're not going to talk about China, and he misunderstood that to say, deny what's going on in China.
Yeah, there's a good chance at that, Hugh, because, again, look at Golden State's statement. They didn't say, we disagree, there is a genocide in China happening. They didn't even say, we disagree with his comments about the genocide against the Uyghur people. They said, we disagree with his opinion. Again, leaving you to guess what the opinion is.
That's right, because he had many opinions, all of them stupid, but he had many opinions. Senator, you did such a good job on the floor mimicking Chuck Schumer. I hope you give a floor speech about this fellow, because only attention withers ignorance, and this fellow needs withering. And he needs educating, and he needs to apologize. He needs to divest of his warriors. And he just he's trying to draw attention to the fact he did a SPAC with something called Pro Kidney. And they're having fun with him on Twitter, wondering where he's getting his kidneys from. That is a very macabre reference to the organ harvesting underway in China.
Yeah, well, I don't think any kind of new business deals he's going to announce is going to turn away from the infamous comments he made on this podcast over the weekend, Hugh.
I agree. Senator Tom Cotton, thank you for joining me. Don't go anywhere, America.